Still. What it is, what it do.
Yo, the kid's official sliding on the instrumental. Nordic combos, twist your mental like forbidden.
Peace to the public and power to the people.
Peace to the public. Yo, blessings, greetings, welcome. Feel welcomed, get comfortable. This is the space where the vulnerable are powerful. Church, and where the most gangster thing you can do is church. Talk on it. Hey man, listen, it's such a pleasure to be here with you, my brother, on this show that we do absolutely every single week. There's so much happening in the world, man. There's so much happening. You're a community activist. I like to consider myself an impact creative, and together we put the show together where we cultivate a space of positive energy, of information, the place where art meets impact, you know, and then we drizzle that with some content. And I appreciate this space. It's good to, like, during the week we keep our heads down, working for the people. We might get into a little bit of that later today, tell y'all about how that's been. But then it's dope to be able to put our heads together and process in real time what's going on in the world. So I'm always appreciative of this space for that. This is carefully curated content for our cranium, for everybody's cranium. And whether it's one person, 10 people, 1,000 people, man, it doesn't matter to us. Everybody's family. Shout out to my mom, because I know she's always watching, man. I appreciate that support. Miles, there's so much to talk about and so many reasons we do this, man. What I always like to put at the beginning of these shows is the fact that when my cousin took his life a few years ago, I was really hoping, man, that if there was just a moment or a place to go for some good energy, for some positivity to keep him pushing, just to that next thought, you know, maybe that could have helped. And so for us, man, we're led by things like that to say that we know a lot of people going through it. You know, people are depressed, there's anxiety, there's all these things that are happening. So it's a pleasure for us to put together a space of positivity, some information, give it to folks to keep pushing through their days and through their weeks. Where was Cuzzo from, bro? South Africa. South Africa. Well, South Africa is most definitely in the building. Yes, sir. No doubt, man. No doubt. And UK's in the building. Birmingham is in the building. You know what I'm saying? London's in the building. Exeter's in the building. Our producer Hassan on that side. Shout out to you for keeping everything tight, crispy, polished, packaged for the people. You know what I'm saying? And on this side, where we at? Chicago is in the building. Talk about it. This podcast is recorded on stolen land. This land was cared for by the Potawatomi people, the Council of the Three Fires, and the violence done to remove them from this land is inseparable from the violence that we see in this city today, this country today, in this world today. Me, myself, I'm committed to addressing that violence and collaborating with everybody, with an emphasis on Black and brown folks, with an emphasis on First Nations and Indigenous people in order to address that violence. And so we got to lift up love between Black and brown people and First Nations people the world over. We lift up love to y'all out there, and that's how y'all know the intro's over. Let's get into the show. Let's do it.
Yeah, I get that, but is we live though? Is we like all the way live though? You heard?
Be comfortable, but try and lean in. You know, we're working with this mic thing. Yeah. We gotta upgrade the number of mics that we have. But that being said, man, it's so good to see you. I still can't believe we get to do this show in person after 80 episodes, over a year of recording. And what a privilege to be able to speak about impact stuff with you. What I learned about you this weekend is you're the Chicago Superman. You know, you walk around places and there's people who are just so excited to see you when you come into your community, right? So this week, we spent some time at the Chicago Food Depository. We spent some time at Chosen Bethel, Bread of Life Food Pantry, and it's
humbling. It's an honor to be able to come into that space and be able to give the incredible force of nature that leads that pantry is Pastor Sandy. And she always says that we're giving out more than food, we're giving out grace and mercy. And I think you can feel that spirit from the jump. We're like, you can definitely feel that spirit. So it was incredible to be back in that space. I spent a lot of time there over the pandemic. We were able to move a team that I was working with, collecting data around violence, to supporting that pantry. And that pantry was able to serve multiple communities in a huge way. So as much as they're happy to see me, I'm so grateful to have time to pop in and see them, and to be greeted in that way. Because when you take part in giving and sharing, giving of yourself, and also providing things that people need, that creates and forms bonds, amongst everybody in that space. And I think very quickly you felt adopted. Tell me how it felt just for you to be there.
The cool thing for me, because my journey of impact really does start in this city, in this place, watching you when you were starting, going into really embracing being somebody that wants to be active in your community. So fast forward a few years later, and to see where you started, where was essentially, new to the space, active, working very hard in many different things to establish yourself in your community. And now when you walk in, literally, it's like a party. It was like, Miles. Literally, is how it is when you step into spaces, man. So it's it was, as a friend and as a brother and as a coworker, and as somebody that looks up to you when it comes to this space of impact. It's really dope to see how the time you've invested in your city manifests itself.
Well, I appreciate that. That's a high compliment coming from you, especially because you're somebody who's created and curated that welcome for me in spaces. As a Black man, to be able to travel to South Africa and to have that type of welcome of people that loved me through what they knew of me through you was incredible and transformative for me, right? So I'm glad to be able to share and return that in kind. And I know, as somebody who's been extremely focused on impact, but working on that impact often from afar, right? Often working on that impact from feeding kids in South Africa while doing your master's in London, right? Helping kids in Chicago while working in school up in Exeter, and then up in school in Scotland, right? And so to be able to have you in the place where all those efforts are bearing fruit, I think was really important for you to experience. And I'm looking forward to getting into much more of that. Mm-hmm. We're going to be moving around, delivering some food to folks here on the South Side, which is an incredible opportunity. We're going to be looking for organizations, partners to build with along the route as we're delivering food, spreading flyers, spreading awareness, spreading love, spreading joy as we do. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so I'm excited for what's coming next. Do you want to tell them a little bit about what we're cooking up in terms of what's coming next? Mandulo, live, these series.
There's so many things, and I feel like, follow the places where we're active and you'll see the work. I think it's the season of letting the work speak for itself. There's so many things that are happening, and the world really is just bursting with opportunity. So again, for us, we're going to continue to try and make helping people the coolest thing that can be done, being real swaggy about it, bringing that type of just a feeling and excitement and draw towards helping. And I think that's quite important. So every day I feel fortunate to have so many outlets of creativity, and have those creative things be focused on helping people. So a lot's coming.
No doubt. No doubt. And in what you've often described as sharing good fortune and making, helping, making service look fly. We found some pretty dope partners in that, right? I mean, even just through this journey, even the connection between just me getting to know Hassan, our producer, has been fly, right? A lot of the folks that are working on some of the various projects are fly. Shout out to the dog Cloney who be watching the show. You know what I mean? Like this, it's really a community thing. And so in the coming weeks, it's going to be pretty fire for us to be able to spotlight some of our partners in this work to showcase, some of the amazing people. Use this impact spotlight space with an artist spotlight space, which we've used to highlight so many people that we dig, to highlight some of the people that we dig and know.
It really did feel like at some point there was so many creative, talented, cool, intelligent, just brilliant people around us. It was quite, you get taken aback. You have Chilla, for instance, Chilla Mukwena, who's also a big supporter of the show, who's early 20s, building technology things that are trying to help people. You have from all across, like you said, our producer, same thing, one of the coolest people you'll ever meet, who's just so tapped into creative things, but has a direction for helping people. And when you're surrounded by these types of people, you gotta be like, yo, there's gotta be something for us to be able to do together, man. So that's what we promote. That's what we present. We do that every single week. So definitely be sure to check out our Mandulo Foundation page. Check out what Miles is doing. Check out what I'm doing. Updates are going to keep going into there. And if you're doing something too, let us know.
Word. Yeah, we want to get tapped in. We want to support that. We want to be a part of that. We want to big you up. This space is your space as much as it's our space, and we would love to have you in this space. I think we're trying to cook up and have a few more people come through this space to talk to you and y'all. So this is everybody's mic right here. This is everybody's spotlight right here. And I think that's cool. I think that's a cool place to close it.
Yeah, man. And some of the things we're gonna have to spotlight are all the topics we have coming through for the show today. Without further ado, man, producer, take us there.
Listeners, y'all in for a treat, man. Zway and I are going to provide a bit of a, don't be scared. Don't be scared. We're going to provide a bit of a State of the Union on a topic that is near and dear to our hearts. Health, right? You feel like y'all saw the sigh of relief on his face?
Listen, man, I
didn't know where I was going.
You see, we don't do enough pre-production on these things, but
health, wellness.
Where you going with it? Take me where you're going.
There's lots of transformations. I think that's kind of a broader theme even for the show today. It's like health, wellness, and so the first topic we're getting into is an industry that's transforming, a topic that might have been touchy at times, but hopefully even the conversations are transforming. 2020 twin, Zay, cannabis.
So
where we at with it?
Off the cannabis specifically, when we're led by the announcement that came from President Joe Biden earlier a couple of weeks ago, with the inclusion now of saying that federal offenses, people that have federal offenses from minor cannabis possessions should be expunged. And this is kind of part of a bigger wheel of change that we've been seeing in the industry, in how at least the government has been treating cannabis in the US. Chicago over here, it's now legal. So the conversation around cannabis, weed, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, being legal, always had that backhand to it, where it was like, okay, cool. You have people who are selling it now, making a lot of money, but then there's also a lot of people that are still incarcerated over something that is now legal to do. What do we do about that? And this would be considered some of the bigger first steps that have been taken in order to addressing the other side of the people that have been incarcerated because of this.
Yeah, from a national perspective, we've been real slow to move on that, right? It's a glaring discrepancy, contradiction, whatever you'd like to call it, but we've been real slow to acknowledge it or account for it. Thankfully, because of the way that the U.S. is set up, states' rights versus federal rights. There have actually been some programs, most notably in California, to connect people who were formerly incarcerated due to cannabis to all these opportunities in this growing market, right? But now from a federal level, they're also recognizing, yeah, we've locked a lot of people up for something that is now making millionaires, right? And an industry that will soon, I think, be very close to resembling the alcohol industry in terms of the opportunities, in terms of marketing, in terms of how accepted it is as a part of society, right? So I appreciate like that you gave the context of this news from Biden coming across and being like, okay, so now this is happening at a national level. And a few other stories popped up that are kind of aligned with this, right? At the university level, multiple schools, including our alma mater, U of I, right, are offering cannabis-based classes to put people on a path to participate in this new industry, right? There's cannabis business, there's cannabis law, there's cannabis production.
Interesting.
Right? There's cannabis science and biochemistry. And I think it would be dope, right? Maybe at some point we can have a cannabis expert, on here to talk about. We got to get a better camera so y'all can catch these
and
subtle...
for the exclusive cannabis expert for today's show, we have reached for the best of experts that help us dive deep into this. Miles Xavier, help us understand. You're the cannabis expert.
Yeah, what? Puts hat on backwards? Is that how I switch modes? But yo, check this out. All right. So I'm gonna be labeled.
Talk to me.
Since you've labeled me the expert, let me hit them with some facts, right? And
nice.
Illinois became the 11th state to legalize cannabis in 2019. And it's growing in a big way. There are now 110 dispensaries in Illinois, and 185 more licenses for dispensaries, right?
Say that again.
There are 110 dispensaries in Illinois as of 2019, I believe. Or no. 20. I think that's a 2020 fact. 110 dispensaries in Illinois.
Okay.
Right?
For 138 licenses.
185 more licenses.
Okay.
To make even more dispensaries.
How hard is it to get a license for dispensary in Chicago?
I'm glad you asked. I didn't think you was going to ask.
Come on.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. And so I believe Illinois has had some similar legislation to what's going on in California in order to allow some folks that are formerly incarcerated due to cannabis be connected to some of those pipelines. I believe that does exist in Illinois as well as California. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of people who don't have a whole bunch of capital to sit on, that don't have that don't have lawyers, right? That don't have real estate lawyers to buy them land or to buy them factories or equipment or the other forms of capital that it takes to run a real legal marijuana farm, to go through checks. It's very difficult. It's not an easy process. Very few people have been able to do it. And oftentimes it's been people that are already connected to some type of agricultural industry, something adjacent to ease that transition.
So you don't have a lot of new people who are just starting out first time bursting into these industries, essentially.
I wouldn't say you don't have a lot, but I would say that's not most of who's becoming big companies and making a lot of the profits now that cannabis is legal. I wouldn't say it's those small mom and pop farms or dispensaries that are trying to, make a name for themselves. It's a lot of folks that were already doing something similar or that have been in places like Colorado already where cannabis was legal before Illinois, moving into this space, right? But what all of that amounts to is large amounts of money.
Yes.
All right. It's election season. Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois is touting his numbers, right? How much do you think they collected in tax dollars for cannabis in Illinois this past year?
$80 million.
$80 million?
Yeah.
Up it.
120.
Up it.
300 million.
Up it.
450.
445 M's.
Ooh.
In taxes alone, off of how much you think it sales?
If tax is 35% corporate, then you're looking at about $2 billion in
1.5 B.
Yeah.
$1.5 billion in sales of cannabis in Illinois alone.
And this is recent because this only started becoming legal 2 years ago.
That's in 1 year.
That's wild.
That's crazy.
That's incredible.
A lot of money on the table, right? So we talked about some of the opportunities that are being created for folks with degrees to get some of that money. But you don't have to have a degree. You could go be a bud tender. You could go be a trimmer. You could go be a laborer on a farm. Get in on this, man. That's what I'm saying to y'all.
It gets real frustrating when you understand that it's 2022 and we're making these developments now from regulatory things and not having it go into school, universities, like you're saying. But it all really does stem from undoubtedly a racist backlash, like fundamental, and like I hate making things about race, so I try not to.
I love making things about race, so I love when you do it.
I mean, and that's why we have this show, right? With the balance. But essentially, in the States, and doing this research helped me realize this, here in the US, the reason why it started becoming outlawed is because of the farming industry that was threatened by the value proposition of cannabis, because it could replace a bit of the cotton
They
market.
didn't want that hemp.
They don't want that hemp to come in, but then also the branding and even how it became illegal from a consumer standpoint is because Mexicans were moving through the border, and that they were migrating into the U.S. at the time, and they introduced they introduced the smoking of the plants as a recreational activity, and then from that point, literally the reason why cannabis was then marijuana, like as put out now, is because it would more reflect the language of where it's coming from. So cover the language in marijuana is the N-word of cannabis, is what it is. And then movies started coming out, things like Reefer Madness, that were depicting if you smoke a bit of it, you would be a raping, violent creature, much like the black man and jazz players. So after all of that marketing, it's just insane. It makes sense now why the disproportionate number of people that are arrested and in jail for these things are people of color. It was demonized and then monetized through the prison industrial complex.
I'm gonna let that breathe, man. Gotta let that breathe. Like, you really just broke it down. And that's why things like making sure that there's a pipeline for folks who are incarcerated due specifically to marijuana crimes. And there's a conversation to be had here, right? Because in the states where you have something like the 3-strike rule, you might have a burglary in there somewhere, right? You might have an assault in there somewhere. But if you got 2 out of 3 that are marijuana crimes, or your third was a marijuana crime, right? And that's a reason why you're incarcerated, not able to continue or complete your education, not able to take advantage of maybe you already have some connection, what I'm saying? A little situation that could have made you a prime candidate to make a legal living off of this as our standards change. So it's important to keep those folks in mind. It's important to know what communities it has affected, both from an economic standpoint and from a social standpoint. People that have been criminalized around marijuana, how often has people been stopped wrongfully by the police, caught with a little bit of weed, and said, see, that makes it all worth it, right? And so this is a whole social thing, especially in the States. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens as it becomes legal more broadly, and who gets the benefit from that.
Part of the argument around why the stigma around marijuana is that it's a gateway drug, right? Is that if you take that is the drug that you take to then open the door for taking other drugs. And I don't disagree with that. But I think that all drugs are a gateway drug. I think anything you do to get high is going to probably lead you to want to seek out other things that do it. So if we're starting to draw the line at marijuana, we've skipped sugar or our phones. These are things that we're constantly getting high off of, don't think about it, and then progressively our tolerance goes up, and then we seek different things. So to label a single drug as the gateway drug, I think is a bit blind.
1000%, 1000%. And I'm glad you brought in a broader conversation of like the way that we treat things and who it benefits. These conversations evolve over time, right? Like you brought in why from the hemp and paper perspective, why you would push that out. Alcohol was illegal for a little while, right? Then the Kennedys, who were part of the families that were bootlegging, got to become presidents, right? So it's really interesting who we see as criminals and who we see as products of their time, right?
Interesting.
It's a really interesting conversation because we're also in a space now where it's not like, because legalization should do a lot of things, right? It should mean that it's easier to regulate. It should mean that people should be getting a better product, a cleaner product, not mixed or cut with anything else. It should mean that people know the health risks, right? It should mean that it's put restrictions in place for people that are underage to get it. But that only happens if you eliminate the underground market. And the underground market
is booming.
It's still popping.
The underground market is king at the moment.
So the reason for that is the price. Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Yesterday's gram is not today's gram. That's what we would have named the show.
Listen,
yesterday's gram is not today's gram.
In states where that pot is legal, there's a $9.25 tax for every ounce from the dispensary.
$9.25.
So they're paying $9 for every ounce that go out.
How much does an ounce go for?
It depends on who you know, where it's going. Come on, man. But that cuts into your profit quite heavy. Consumers pay a 15% tax on whatever the price is. So if the price is set at 30, you're gonna pay that 45 when all is said and done. You feel me? So because the streets aren't paying those taxes or don't have to adhere to those, the underground market is still booming. And while clearly $445 million in revenue for Illinois is a huge deal, you don't get some of those other benefits until you get to the point where the price point starts to edge out the underground market, and then you get some of those other benefits. So we're in a weird place right now.
So I was reading recently that in Seattle, they're considering, because of the high rate of overdoses that have been happening, they're opening up centers where people can take usage centers, right?
Nobody wants that in their neighborhood.
Nobody. Is that the issue? Is that what people don't want, these usage centers in their neighborhood?
I think that's part of it. I think part of it is people don't want those usage centers in their neighborhood. I think sometimes people have have struggled to differentiate the cause and a symptom of something. So when they see a place that has a whole bunch of people outside that are drug users, they think the place is the reason why the drug users exist, rather than the drug users already lived in this community and now there's a safe place for them to go, right? But people tend to resent that place. People don't want that in their community, and people don't like the idea of spending tax dollars, even if it's not on drugs, on anything related, needles. What? For somebody that's going to do heroin, my tax dollars? Buy my kids books. Yeah. People really struggle to see, because drug users have been criminalized for such a long time. Only in very certain contexts do we see them as patients, right? People that need help. Yeah. So there's a tight distance when it comes to that.
Yeah, I never knew the other side of that, because it does make sense when you think about it. The drugs are becoming a lot more deadlier. Kids are getting hooked on a lot sooner. Fentanyl is the issue. There's so many different things. So it would make sense to open up these usage centers. And if you've been to places like Skid Row, or you've been to San Diego, all these places where it just is miles of bodies at the side. It's really, really, it's very it's really dark what's happening to the drug world of the U.S. People are taking drugs casually on the street. There's needles hanging out of people's arms. A few years ago, we went to go do a food delivery out there, where we're just taking food and giving them out to people that are, drug addicts in San Diego. And, always shout out to our boy Will, who helped facilitate that. And so you're walking around and you're speaking with people, and you realize that This right here could have been any of our friends.
Mhm.
This could have been any of us. If you just got hooked onto the wrong drug, if you had the unfortunate circumstances of being hooked onto the wrong drug,
So a lot of it is brain chemistry. We all rolling the dice at the same table, and for some people that drug clicks and it's good, and for some people that drug clicks and it got you.
so that's why this is what I always say about drugs, right? Is that if we're taking drugs, we're all playing Russian roulette. There's a gun in the middle of the table, and it's spinning, and it's spinning, and it's spinning, and whoever that gun lands on, you're gonna have to pick it up and pull the trigger and see what happens.
I think I struggle with metaphors that are that extreme because we know that absolutes like that don't work because people see so much of what looks like the positive side of drugs.
But this is what I'm saying. Hear me out, right? We cannot determine who is going to get addicted or not. That is entirely almost by chance.
Mhm.
So here we sit in a circle with people that, you go through an experimental phase. That's part of growing up, right? And you experiment, you try something, and that thing that you try, that's nothing to you. But like you say, brain chemistry, that same thing can get somebody addicted. So what I tell my family, what I tell my younger brothers, what I tell anybody that I care about is like, look, just understand you're stepping into an arena where there's a chance of that happening, right? And the best protection you can have is knowing the reason you want to do it, getting into a clean environment, doing it, talking to people before you do it, and then make that decision to do it. That way, at least you can, somewhat have some control on the outcome of it. But just in general, that whole experimenting with random drugs, that's done for. That's done for. Drugs are way, 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 way too crazy right now.
I agree with everything you said. I need you to find a 3-word version of that for people.
Say no. No, I'm playing.
But
I'm playing.
Boom, exactly, right? Because that's what we had, right? We had just say no. And just say no, we know doesn't work because it's not
Practical.
It's not practical. It don't work, right? But when we understood that doesn't, that's where a lot of people's brain is still at. Because even when we understood it didn't work, we didn't replace that with anything more nuanced, anything more critical, anything more empathetic. So what is the catchphrase for drugs are kind of fire, but be careful?
Drugs. 3 words. Drugs. Think about it.
I mean,
think about it.
But I think
that's what I would say. Think about it, because like the reality of existence is that we're all gonna get high. That is the natural human instinct, and that stems from a place where eating food gets you high, which is why you can become addicted to it. So pursuing that sort of high gratification is almost built into our system to be able to find for us to be able to survive. If food did not get us high, then we wouldn't be eating it. You know what I mean? So because it does, and it gives us that endorphin kick, that dopamine kick, now we're in a machine that is developed for thousands of years to have this get high, survive response. And now you get into a place where, the brain is developed a little bit more, and we don't necessarily need that push other than for food. Outside of that, it's like, okay, cool. What else can I get high on? Animals get high off of
honey and stuff.
Amarula plants, fermented foods. There's a great video of animals eating fermented foods, just getting dumb high. So it's that is a human experience, right? But I do think that allowing yourself the best chance, like waiting until your brain is fully developed to try, those types of things can give you the best protection. I've been thinking, if I had kids, what would I say to these kids? I would tell my kids, wait until you're the right age for your brain to have developed for you to then do those things. If you want to smoke weed, I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying wait until you are of age, give your brain a fighting chance, 18 or 21, and then take it from there. Shout out to our boy Prince.
Yes, sir. I like that, man. And I appreciate this space as one where we can take all of the real thoughts that maybe contradict each other and that, we're trying to formulate. I love how you framed it as like, what would I tell my kid, or what would I tell somebody I care about? And so I liked what did you say? Think about it. I like talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I think the bottom line in these conversations is drugs are going away, right? I hate to keep harping on the numbers, but if there's one state that can make $450 million, $1.5 billion spent, they're a reality of life. They're a fact of life. And I think much like violence, much like sex, we can't shy away from it and pretend like that is going to be the most healthy path for us to take, is to ignore their existence. Conversation, right? Like, and I hope that I have a relationship with my kid and with everybody that I care about where they know they can be their whole self when they talk to me and to be real about what the drugs that they want to do, what they're thinking about, and I can weigh in, and that my input carries weight, especially with my kids. So talk about it, man. Just don't sweep it under the rug, right? Stop. What does Kendrick say? Stop tap dancing.
Hey, drugs. Talk about it. Think about it. You heard about it. There's a whole lot of resources that we will provide on information on it, right? Information. Do you have any off the top of your head?
Off tops. Check the description, man. By the time this goes live, we'll put some resources in the description, yo.
Yeah, and I would like to speak to anybody, man, that's in the space doing that. Be a farmer, legal. It would be interesting to get the legal side of it. Impact space. Holla at the boys. Other than that, current news. Current news today. Ran back to off the current news. We saw that a recent article came out where they said that kids from the age of 8 to 10 years old should be screened for anxiety and to be screened for depression.
Yo, this is crazy because we've had a lot of conversations about issues connected to mental health, but something that really stuck with me a few months back.
Yep.
Look at them cheesing.
Come on.
Look at them smiling.
Come on.
You said it. And I remember telling you, like, it was the first time that I heard it put in such a serious way, but that it should be mandatory for people through whatever channel to be screened for mental health and to have access to a therapist, to somebody that can kind of assess what's going on with them and their emotional state. And I was like, dang.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, it's this panel. It's somebody agrees with you.
Evidently.
And who happens to agree is the U.S. Preventative Service Task Force.
Come on, man.
They missing a member.
They're biting is what they're actually doing. I think the U.S. Task Force is watching this show and taking some ideas. Is clearly what's happening.
Okay. Shout out to the Preventive Service Task Force. I feel some kinship with them, right? They preventive, I'm preventive. Violence prevention, virus prevention.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I shout out to them. Don't bite our stuff, man. Credit us at least if you go throw it out there. But shout out to you because that's a really thoughtful. You know what I mean? Like that came from a real place.
Yeah.
Of instinct. I feel like
definitely,
and it's playing out in the science. So they're saying, that kids as young as 8 should be screened for anxiety. Kids as young as 12 can be screened for depression. Part of me feels like that's fire. Part of me feels like that has to be done carefully. What did it feel like to dive into that for you?
Part of the reason why people are so against kids being screened for anxiety and depression and things like that is the idea that you're almost warming them up to those ideas so that they can identify as those ideas quicker. So it would be like, come on, when we were younger and we were growing up, we didn't need none of that. That doesn't make no sense, like that. But then it's a bit that's where it's a bit misaligned, where it's like it's because we haven't taken this as seriously for as long as we should have. That's the reason why we're seeing the numbers that they are today, as opposed to if you teach kids about it from an early age, they're more likely to be able to do that. The reason why this is incredible is because, and the reason why it makes sense to me is because a lot of kids are exhibiting signs of trauma, of depression, of anxieties, and things like that. And a lot of times, especially at that age, it's more due to experiences and traumatic experiences that children have had. Why is it that young Timmy keeps biting on the collar of his shirt? Why is it that he doesn't speak at all during school? Why is why is it that he keeps wetting the bed? There's so many different signs that kids exhibit over time, and I think first kids learn how to be able to cope, hide, and live with that, and then also the families then get into a habit of ignoring that, and that trait and spiral of kids being ignored and kids hiding, I think, is a direct reflection of then what we end up seeing now when there is kids killing each other.
And themselves.
Kids killing themselves.
You spot on again, right? So there's according to the Center for Disease Control, there's 5.8 million children in the U.S. diagnosed with anxiety, right? There's 2.7 million diagnosed with depression. And according to their estimates, half of youth in the U.S. with a treatable condition do not receive treatment, right? So I think instinctually, as you've laid out, we know that. I think that's part of why we do the show. And I think access to that is really important. I think the part of me that's hesitant, and I like how you acknowledged, right? Bless you.
Thank you.
Bless you again. Oof. We're gonna take you for a checkup right after this.
Thank you.
Make sure you're good.
Yeah.
But you can hook me up with the multivitamins. I appreciate that.
Come on, man. I'm giving you some biotin. I'm giving you some collagen. I'm gonna get your skin looking right.
I'll look out there. You feel me? But so yeah, I appreciate you mentioned some of the misgivings some people might have. I know as a member of a system avoidant population, that's a cool term that I learned a few months back. System avoidant, it means we don't like to go nowhere where they're gonna write down our names.
System avoidance?
System avoidant. We don't like to go nowhere where they write down our names, where they take down our information, our address, how much money we making. We don't like that. It might interfere with our services.
Interesting.
With what we got going on.
Interesting.
We've also had run-ins with law enforcement and authorities. You know what I'm saying? That also makes us hesitant to run into situations where more information about us is being taken, cataloged, and being stored by some authority that we have no relationship with.
Okay.
Right? The other half of this is that there's a shortage of mental health professionals to care for all these people, right? I love that more people are talking about mental health, that are seeking it out. A big result of that is like these telehealth companies that have come up, right? BetterHelp is a good example. Ways that you can tap in through apps, but a lot of folks are talking to a specialist and receiving, saying, oh yeah, you should be prescribed for this medication. That's happening at a very fast rate, right? And so I guess my worry is, how do we balance access to these services with a need for the highest quality of care, especially when you're dealing with kids? Backing up a little bit, the screenings that they're talking about introducing aren't to diagnose kids with anxiety or depression. They're supposed to identify kids who might need some extra help. But we know that that's a quick pathway, right? So especially when kids are involved, how do we make sure, even under a shortage of medical professionals, that the quality of care doesn't lead to over medicating?
That would be my biggest reservation on screening children so young in this country, specifically, because the U.S. has a very heavy hand when it comes to prescribing medicines. They say that there's enough opiates in Florida alone, right, to give everybody in the U.S. 3 times.
I want my 3. I'm playing. I'm playing.
Give us 3. You're foolish.
Yeah.
You find dumb.
I brought it out of you.
You find dumb things funny. That's your problem.
It is.
And
if you relate,
you find dumb things funny. Yeah. But the issue is that in the States, there is a heavy overprescription culture in this country. So I would like to see this screening of kids that are young for anxiety and depression happen, but with a very far with medication being the absolute last resort. Because if we're speaking about what the development of the brain and at what point in time children are able to actually accommodate the size and like the magnitude of these pills, is because it can change your brain functions indefinitely. Jeffrey Dahmer. You know what I mean? Step one.
Word. And like, even bringing it home, like I have homies that, I feel a type of way about it because I've been to school in a variety of different places. I've been to school in places where my personal feeling is there are some schools and environments that don't know how to care for kids that are from environments outside of what that school typically serves. And I think a lot of those kids were quick to get medication.
Yeah.
Medication that mixes horribly with things that kids experiment with, right? Jumping back to the cannabis conversation, think about it, talk about it for sure. But if you're on some other type of medication, I wouldn't recommend it, player. I wouldn't recommend it, player. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. It's interesting though, so many of these news stories that's going on linking up. Even where medication is the correct path, it might be hard to access, man. There's a shortage right now for any of our folks that face the challenges of ADHD, of Adderall.
There's a shortage of Adderall?
Big shortage of Adderall.
Do they look in American universities and law schools?
Yo, son. We ain't gotta out him. We ain't gotta out them all.
Have they looked at white universities? Because that's what they're at.
Big zips, man.
What do they say?
Corporate too. But that's what they're saying. It's a big shortage of that. So they're basically telling people look to alternative methods. Maybe something that should have been considered more seriously in the first place. But it's again, that telehealth, a lot of new prescriptions have gone out. It's been hard to track how many people are now being prescribed, and they're adjusting people's prescriptions just so they can have access to something, right? So we're in this difficult place, and we don't like to point fingers on this show, but these drug companies make a lot of money when they run the demand up, right? Then a supply problem happens. Now they can't fill that demand. Now you got a lot of people who need it and have been told they need it, that are knocking at the door trying to get it. We've seen this play out in the opioid crisis, right? Drug companies are like, yo, we have this thing and we want everybody who's being served by somebody who's connected to us in their care, they should probably be on it if they have this, which is not the safest way, right? Even to deal with something like ADHD. Not everybody who has ADHD should be prescribed Adderall, right? Certainly shouldn't be looking for whatever prescription they can get. So I think this is another space where we got to have these conversations. We can't be thinking that these companies, because they have a red cross in their logo, are going to guide us to health, right? We have to hold them accountable and say they have a bottom line too. They're letting prescriptions fly. It's great to have access. It's a balancing act between access to quality medical care and making sure that, like you said, medication is a last resort.
Yeah. That's a great conversation, man. I'll tell you my story as a kid, right? I was a problematic child. I was a troublesome kid.
Glad that's over.
Depending who you ask. But there was a point in time where I was prescribed these small brown pills that was supposed to make us focus, or whatever the case. And I remember first day I took it, I felt it. I was like, okay, I immediately sit down, and it was myself and another kid named Michael and this other young girl at the time. And she was one of the few black girls in that school. So there were three of us, and we sat in a corner, and at that corner we were prescribed. All of us were on this thing. First day I took it, I didn't feel so good. Michael, who was worse than I was as a troublesome kid, was just all the way slumped, totally slumped, just zoned out. Cool. Second day, got to take him, put it under my tongue, spat that thing out. Never took those things again. That day, I was like, no ways, I'm never gonna do that. I'll put it under my tongue. I'd walk to the thingy and I'd spit it out. Cool. I just remember seeing how it changed this child. Right. Granted, he was a problematic child, but I just remember seeing what it did to his energy as a kid. And it just scared me. So it's one of those things where it's just like you can't tell any parent what to do. But again, I have to ask myself, if I had a child and they were experiencing some significant learning issues and were prescribed something like that, I don't know if it's something that I do. And we have some comments coming through from Vanessa. Medicated before exploring what in the environment is inducing anxiety, depression, and instability overall. Shout out to Vanessa. Expanding that conversation about how important it is for us to be able to speak of these things, talk about it.
And Vanessa's comment made me think of like what it means to be a problem, what it means to be considered a problem. And I think we treat too many kids like problems. And I think even well-meaning spaces and institutions, when they're overwhelmed, end up treating kids like problems to be solved. This kid is loud. We need to figure out how to get them to be quiet so we can teach all these kids, right? Mm-hmm. This kid has behavioral issues, whatever it is. And there needs to be resources in place that allow those caretakers to slow down and treat each kid like a kid. And there also needs to be protocols in place, especially like layers and layers before we get to a space of medication. What do you know about this person's environment? Like Vanessa said, so fire.
Hey man, we love everybody that watches this show. This is a family show. Healthy conversations, be a part of these conversations. What they love and keep running the numbers up on is anytime we talk about hip hop, music. They want us to talk about that music. So we decided, is that a speaker next to a speaker by a speaker?
We know what y'all like.
So we've decided, man, to really give that portion of our listeners an even better experience because, they keep running up those numbers. We've done something special for the Record Review listeners.
Big facts. And they trying to block us, yo. You know what I'm saying? They trying to stop our shine. And also we're navigating the waters and seeing what we can and can't do as far as playing music. So shout out to anybody who clicked the link. Hope y'all got to checked out what we were doing. If you clicked it after it got blocked, we're figuring out how to keep those things live. But essentially what we're doing is thinking about what we're going to Record Review. We're listening to music that's adjacent to that. Type jams is, I think, what we've coined it, right? Mm-hmm. So this week, the Lil Baby album dropped. It's Only Me. We got into some It's Only Me type jams. We would play you the type jams, but we would get this video blocked as well. So we'll play you the review that we, us talking about it behind the boards after we play those records. Then we'll come back to close out the show. But yeah, let us know what y'all think of this new format. We're really experimenting with new things, and definitely stay tuned for more listening sessions, more record spinning sessions, because that's what it's about, baby. It's good vibes. We can talk your ear off, but we can also soothe you and groove you too. You feel me?
Hey man, live review, live jams. Take it away, producer.
Yeah, it feels good, bro, to be able to come here and really celebrate somebody, Live House Productions, all the way live. Check out the show. We review things, right? Recommend and review things. And a lot of times, it's a back and forth, trying to figure out how we feel about things, trying to feel why we like things, trying to feel out, where's the game headed. And it always feels good to really be able to genuinely celebrate somebody. And I think with this project, Baby has earned that. What you think?
For sure, bro. Like, it's really dope. This album is really, really dope, And it's like, it's one of those few albums I think, like, once you this type of sound is so played out, right? Like a lot of people are doing this sound.
But you can't say that because of what he did, which is the whole thing.
What do you mean by that?
Like, if you could take a Kendrick project, right, and you can be like, this is how you teach a class on hip hop lyricism. My hot take for this album is that you could low key take this album and teach a class on how to make a hip hop sound like last. You feel me? How to make this is how when a sound is seem like it's gonna be dead, this how you revive it.
Interesting. So you're saying this sound revived a certain. Which sound would you say then it revived?
I mean, I'm mostly talking about his own, right? Like, Baby has a very specific flow. As soon as you hear Baby on a song, it's him, right? Not saying that he doesn't have people copying him, but there's a very specific sound that Baby has in his music, and he's a prolific writer and a producer of music, which means we've heard a lot of Baby since Baby came out, and the flow hasn't changed all that much, but this is a masterclass on how to keep that interesting, on how to use features to keep that sound alive. It's very well thought out, and it's even in like his production choices, like there's very few missteps for an artist that has a lot of peers and predecessors that have fallen off for minor mistakes.
So, because like one thing we do in hip hop really well, right? We'll celebrate a sound heavy, and then once it dies or once it gets overused, the originator of that sound will be the last one holding it. You know, like you're always the last to know that you fell off, type thing. But in this instance, I like this is how you keep your sound evolving without losing the element of it that excited everyone. And I think this album is super exciting. It's one of those albums off of your first listen. I'm not even gonna lie to you, right? And I hate to be like a prisoner of the moment, but it's one of the best first listens I've had on an album. I think just enjoyability, thoroughness, and it's crazy because on My Turn, the album before this, Baby did a similar thing where he kept it going, but like it seems like he realized the low points of that particular album and did a whole different, tighter version of it. It's brilliant, dude.
I mean, it's really well put together, and I also appreciate that.
Are we being prisoners of the moment right now, bro? Are we just held up because we're having all this fun, you know, eating all this good food? Miles is drinking Remy Martin, apparently. You heard that pronounce it?
Yeah. Pronounce it like you pour it correct. And I hear you. Like this is a different vibe even for us, right? Like listening, recording a review. It dropped today. You took a 37-mile run, got to loop it, got to hear it a lot. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, so I can appreciate the value in revisiting this album, but I think above average when you hear it, especially with a hip hop ear that is that has rinsed through a lot of mediocrity. So with my hip hop ear, there's something else here, because I wake up a lot of Fridays, go to artists that I like or that are popular, and with my personal preference ear and with my ear as like somebody who spins record as a DJ, I'm looking for something. And this has an abundance where a lot of other folks, I'm scraping together one or two tracks that I like. The diversity here from a sound that I can't at this point explain how it's diverse or why it's diverse is satisfying.
Yeah, very, very satisfying. And honestly, it feels like a bit of a breath of fresh air, bro. Because so many times we've had we've anticipated some big drops this year. And for the most part, I think that hip hop is in a pretty decent place. in the type of quality of music that we have, and it's very diverse. But in the same sense, like some of our biggest drops have been this you always have been left like, I get it, but I wish there was, like for instance on the Kendrick album, Kendrick drops and it's theatrical and it's impressive and it's grand, and it's beautifully put together, but like I wish I would have had more slaps or something like that, right? Drake, it's all dance music. I wish I had more rap. And then the last Mac Homie, it's dope, but I wish I would have had more Pray for Haiti. And then you get this, and it drops, and you go, well, I just had everything that I need.
Well, I think it's something to be said for hip hop, as some artists are single artists, and some artists are album artists. And this isn't, I'm chefing this on the moment, so I haven't thought about this before.
We're prisoners of the moment. Help us.
Need somebody.
We're prisoners of the moment.
Anyone.
This looks like a fly prison.
Yeah, me, you, and Miles Davis. I wonder what we got arrested for.
These look like the mugshots they took of Rocky in Sweden.
That Sinatra one.
The Sinatra one.
You feel me?
It's our Sinatra episode.
But yeah, I think there's something extra special when somebody who's not, or somebody who you wouldn't think would be an album artist, somebody who you would be content to just rock off the singles.
Baby's been dropping albums for a long time though, bro.
But Baby's been putting together albums of singles. Like when My Turn came out, we had already heard a lot of the songs that we knew were gonna hit before. Some to Prove, I think, might have been the first single. We knew Whoa was gonna go crazy, right? Like,
but like Baby always does that. Baby drops so much fire. Every album has gang singles on it, but that's just because of the type of artist makes. Do you think we can play music in the background?
We can't, otherwise we'll get demonetized. This whole, so we can play music before and cut it, and we can play music after and cut it. But if we play music in the middle, then if we transfer that video elsewhere or do anything else with it,
You heard.
Yata.
I tried.
So sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but to that same point, right?
Boo Miles in the comments, please.
Boo me up.
What?
I'm booed up. Don't worry about it. 2018. 2018, right? Crush a Lot, Time, Anyway, Realist in It, Chastise.
Pure Cocaine.
All of that came off of Street Gossip, and we heard a lot of those songs before the album actually dropped. So I guess what I'm saying is this was one where it was like everything came together in the album moment, and to get that from an artist who I'm usually content to listen to on the radio and hear when I'm out was fire. So I can't commend this man enough on all of his choices. And if I can add one more thing to that, 23 songs, an hour and 5 minutes. This is the easiest hour of music to get through that I've had in a long time.
And we ran it this morning too, working.
I don't recommend a lot of artists drop albums that are over an hour.
I couldn't believe it was an hour. You know what it actually made me? It made me question how long an hour of music actually is.
All right, now, come on.
It changed my perception of
Lil
time.
Baby bent the space-time continuum.
Come on, bro. I was there. I seen it happen. It was wild.
Wow.
It was wild.
I seen it happen.
I was with you. You
there.
were doing emails for 2 hours.
And baby,
And one of those, and we played that album in the background, and it just flowed. But that's the thing. We played it in a work environment. I played it when I was at the gym. Played it when we were driving. Playing it here. Very versatile. And it's not. I hope this album goes appreciated, because even in this genre of music, the features that he has are also doing an incredible job. ESTG is on there. That Friday, I don't know, something about this dude's voice, bro. Something about that Friday's voice with 2 eyes. Friday with 2 eyes. He was also on that DJ Khaled God did.
There's actually a lot of artists that are going crazy on the hooks, man. Shout out Blast. There's a few people in that space that are really.
It's pronounced Blackst.
It's not. Is it Blackst?
I don't think so.
Him and Six Lack are gonna come beat me up.
Yo.
No, I'm playing.
That's a good one, man.
Oh my goodness, that was so much fun to watch.
Yeah, man, it's cool to see the growth. It's cool to have many segments to be able to pull from them and connect to them. Needless to say, I think you can tell just from watching that we had a really good time listening to the album. I really dug it. Sway really dug it.
Mm-hmm.
Hassan was like, and I respect that.
We'll get our producer score. He'll put his score up. We're interested to see what it is because I give it a 4 out of 5 at the moment.
Yeah, I'm with
maybe
a 4
maybe even a 4.5. I don't want to be too hype about it, but
I think a 4
out of 5 is very fair.
I think a 4 out of 5 is solid. I think I was surprised by the lack of ear fatigue, and I was surprised by somebody who I thought I knew their skill set showing me something that I would to still be interested in and to follow. So I'm down to give it a 4 out of 5. Lil Baby, It's Only Me. Drum roll, please, for the producer score. Where we at? What's the official?
He said he
score?
hasn't finished listening to it.
Okay.
That's very fair. That's very fair.
So it's a 4 out of 5 for now.
It's 4 out of 5 for the boys.
We inching towards the end of the year, man. So it might be. We're not too far off for maybe a year review. I think this will be there. Like that team from Coach Carter. It will be there, gentlemen.
It will be. It will be. And we're gonna be doing the official review again next week, Friday. What we do is quite easily. We spin the record, it drops, we listen to it live. It's a whole party, man. It's a listening session. You know, we all get together, have fun with it, play some of our favorite tracks. We'll keep figuring out how to put it out.
Yeah.
But definitely join us. It's a time.
Y'all keep figuring out how to tune in, man. Whether y'all in the car, whether y'all working, whether you studying, whether you reading, whether you chilling out on this fine Sunday, whether you about to go engage in some service yourself, listen to some hip hop yourself. We appreciate you. This is a celebration of celebrating. It's a celebration that Zway is in the building. It's a celebration of life. It's a celebration of how good it feels to be healthy. Don't it feel good, Zway?
Hey, man. We thank God for health.
Big facts. Big facts. Shout out to y'all. Stay healthy, get well, get better. And we're going to get up with y'all next week. Peace.
Yeah, I get that. But is we live though? Is we like